So much happening in the world of Linkin Park right now. We've got a new song released just today, some new stadium shows also announced just today, and a brand new interview with Mike Shinoda where he's seemingly responding to the backlash that the band has been getting in recent weeks since they've announced that reunion, including from Chester Bennington's own family members, where you have his mom and his son saying they feel betrayed by Linkin Park's decision to reunite. You had Chester's mom writing a column in Rolling Stone where she said that she was promised she would be told when Linkin Park was coming back, and unfortunately that did not occur. She said a lot of other things as well. We're going to recap some of that in just a moment. But first, this new single out today from the upcoming record From Zero, which drops in November. The new song out today is called Heavy Is the Crown, and we got a preview of that where Linkin Park performed it live in Germany. And for those of you that have heard it, let me know what you think in the comments. But my initial observations on the first couple of listens is I genuinely really like it. If you listen to this song, I get strong Meteora vibes from it. Some great screaming in there as well. This is, to me, one of the heaviest songs I've heard from Linkin Park in quite some time. So I'm super optimistic about this record from Linkin Park. It's never going to be like what Chester did, and you hear Mike sort of alluding to this in this new interview from what they gave, but definitely am digging what I hear on this new song. This is, I think as Nick Nocturnal said on Twitter, I thought this was great. He said, this is the most Linkin Park sounding song I've ever heard. And so it seems like Linkin Park is really going for this, and they're really, not trying to go against the grain and change from what the fans want to hear. They're really giving the fans what they want in terms of the sound. So you have a lot of very happy people, and of course, there are many detractors as well. There are many people who are unhappy about this for a number of reasons. There are people who are even outraged by this, as I have seen in the comments. And, I respect all points of view here. So there are certainly warranted criticisms of Linkin Park. I think you're hearing that from Chester's son. You're hearing that from Chester's mom as well in that column. But needless to say, Linkin Park definitely has a right to persist and continue as a band. And that is what they are poised to do with this new record. And as I said with the Pantera reunion news, if you don't want to see it, certainly don't go. It doesn't look like they're having any trouble selling out these arenas, and now they're moving up to stadiums. You've got one just announced in Dallas. I think there's another one in Paris, and then they're doing another in Brazil, and this is going to be in the next few weeks. So interestingly enough, the opening acts on these shows are very, very cool. I got to give credit where credit is due here. You have Bad Omens opening up for Linkin Park at the show in Texas, in Dallas. They're performing at a stadium there. And then you also have, ladies and gentlemen, none other than Sleep Token opening for Linkin Park at their show in Paris. And I think you have Helmet opening for them in Brazil. I could be wrong, but I've got all of the details up on your screen right now. And it's very, very interesting to see Linkin Park bringing out Bad Omens, bringing out Sleep Token, and it's clear that they're really trying to appeal not just to the old school Linkin Park fans from way back in the day, but really trying to keep their fingers on the pulse of what's happening right now in rock. And there's so much to be excited about on that front when you look at Linkin Park with both Bad Omens and Sleep Token. These are two of the fastest rising bands currently in rock. So it's really neat to see that up on those lineups. Now, what I also think is interesting about this Linkin Park reunion is what we're seeing from the live production. They really have a very unique live production. It looks really cool. The light show is insane. I still haven't got to see it in person yet, but the videos that I'm seeing, their production, they've also put out some behind the scenes stuff of how that all came together. I think that's really interesting. Now, you have Mike Shinoda in this new interview also seemingly responding to the backlash as much as I think they're going to respond to it. So far, I think these interviews that we've seen from Linkin Park have left much to be desired. I don't really like when there are interviews, and from my standpoint, they appear to be, I would suggest maybe there's questions that they can't ask, or there's subject matters that are off limits, and they're very kind of sheltered style interviews from what I can see. And that's not to say that Linkin Park needs to sit in some interview and have somebody just bashing them or asking them insane questions or anything, but certainly there should be maybe some questions to be asked about what is being said about this band on a variety of subject matters. And as of yet, I haven't really seen that. But this is, I think, as close as we may get of a response from Mike Shinoda on all of the things that are being said. And, Whether or not they feel the need to respond to this stuff is up to them. I do think that these questions and concerns that a lot of people have aren't necessarily going to go away. And again, I think they're a very smart band. I think they're probably aware of all of this stuff. I do think that they may not have anticipated before all of these announcements just how intense some of this stuff has been with family members criticizing the band and whatnot. But this is a little bit of what has been said by Chester's family, two members of his family, his son and his mom, who have been very critical of Linkin Park's reunion. And they have said that they feel as though Linkin Park is trying to erase Chester's legacy. Me personally, I don't believe that. I don't think they're actually trying to erase his legacy, and I think they should continue. But this is what, from the family standpoint, and they should be heard, this is what Jamie first said about this. Says he's not even able to get into contact with Mike Shinoda. Chester's son Jamie said in part, "Hey Mike, people aren't having a difficult time wrapping their head around the prospect of Linkin Park reinventing itself. They're having a hard time wrapping their head around how you hired your friend of many years, Emily Armstrong, to replace Chester Bennington, knowing Emily's history in the church and her history as an ally to Danny Masterson is what it is. And two, quietly erase my father's life and legacy in real time, not only during a band interview meant to clear the air about certain aspects of Linkin Park's history and future, but during International Prevention Month." Now, only 48 hours or so after Linkin Park introduced Emily Armstrong as the new singer of Linkin Park, she did have to issue a statement in response to her past association with Danny Masterson. You had a member of the Mars Volta calling her out as well for that, and I think that played a big factor in her releasing the following statement. Here's what she had to say at the time. She wrote, "Hi, I'm Emily. I'm new to so many of you, and I wanted to clear the air about something that happened a while back. Several years ago, I was asked to support someone I considered a friend at a court appearance and went to one early hearing as an observer. Soon after, I realized I shouldn't have. I always try to see the good in people, and I misjudged him. I've never spoken with him since. Unimaginable details emerged, and he was later found guilty. To say it as clearly as possible, I do not condone abuse or violence against women, and I empathize with the victims of these crimes." Now, I think it seems quite likely that Emily was born into Scientology, and if anyone can look into Scientology, it's a complex situation if you're born into that, and so she doesn't really speak on it. She hasn't really opened up about that subject matter. I don't know if she will, but at the end of the day, it seems like her support in Danny Masterson's trial early on is somehow linked to that, because he was a noted Scientologist. Now, as for Chester's mom, she posts a very stunning statement in Rolling Stone where she goes into a lot of detail about what Chester said to her about Linkin Park. She alleges in her statement that her son Chester told her that Mike had previously said to him that he would replace him with a female vocalist, and that also the members of the band had promised her that they would let her know about this reunion. Here's a little bit of her statement. You can read the entire thing over at Rolling Stone. Chester Bennington's mom, Susan Eubanks, told Rolling Stone, "I feel like they're trying very hard to erase the past. They're performing songs that Chester sang, and I don't know how the fans are taking it, but I know how I take it. And having Emily singing my son's songs is hurtful." Later in her statement, she alleged that Mike Shinoda would often put Chester down, and she claims that her son Chester told her that Mike told him that they would replace him with a woman if he ever decided to leave the band. She wrote, "Chester was dumbfounded and hurt, and the fact is that now they did it. So of course, all that comes right back into my mind." So you hear the perspective of Chester's family, but it's also important to hear the perspective of Mike and the rest of the band as well. I'm not a person who believes that a band should not continue because they go through something which in this case is a horrific tragedy. I don't think the band should not be able to come back. I do think you should hear what the family has to say, but I don't think that you should just act as though the group has no right to return. And so I support their return for sure. And so this is what Mike has to say. He's very much saying this is not about trying to be like Chester. This is not about trying to erase him or anything. He's really labeling this Linkin Park 2.0. Here's what he said in a new radio interview. In a new interview this week with BBC Radio 1's new music show, Mike Shinoda seemingly addressed the backlash the band has been facing since they announced their reunion. To date, the band has mostly shied away from commenting on the matter, and this is the first time that Shinoda has seemingly addressed some of the controversy in an interview. He said, "This is intended to be a new chapter of Linkin Park. The old chapter was a great chapter, and we loved that chapter. It ran its course, and now we were faced with the challenge of, well, okay, If you start from scratch with another voice, what do you do? Mike says when he initially met Emily, there were no plans of reforming Linkin Park back in 2019. He said, the intention wasn't to start the band up again. We were just slowly coming together, and then eventually things just started to fall into place with Emily and with Colin, our new drummer. We talked about putting her voice on things we'd already written that only had my voice on them. Once we did that, we were like, that sounds really good, and we should try that on even more songs. Of Emily singing in the band, he says passion is the driver of her vocals. He said, when she sings, it's like the passion, and she's just 100% her. That's the best part. She's not trying to be Chester. She's not trying to be anybody else. She's her, and that's why it works. He says the band has meticulously prepared for their live shows. He said, we rehearsed more for this than we've ever rehearsed for anything in our lives. These shows are us figuring out our intuitive ways of how we move and play on stage and making it even more effortless. And so Mike is really saying this is just a new era of the band. They're not trying to replace Chester. They just had to figure out how they're going to move forward. And, I think no matter who they chose as the vocalist, it was never going to be a perfect situation. I do think it seems like they didn't really anticipate some of the stuff with Emily, but overall, I really like the new songs. Their live performances look really good. This song, Heavy as the Crown, is catchy as hell. Gotta say, it's a fantastic song, and so is The Emptiness Machine, so I'm looking forward to hearing more from that. You can also check out the dates up on your screen, the new shows they just announced earlier today. You've got Bad Omen, Sleep Token, Helmet. Cannot imagine what those shows are going to look like with those awesome upcoming rock bands. There's just so much momentum happening in rock and metal right now. So that's your latest update here from Rockfeed. Appreciate you tuning in. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe with notifications on for the latest news and updates.